Let's talk about the key takeaway from the very successful G20 Summit that was held here in the national capital. The G20 Summit is a diplomatic win for India, marked by rapid consensus reached among the member nations on various issues. In a first of its kind, an enormous trade and infrastructure endeavor connecting India, the Middle East and Europe was presented on day one of the summit. As part of the proposal, ports, electricity, data networks, energy pipelines are slated to be developed. It is anticipated that it will serve as a counterbalance to China's Belt and Road Initiative, commonly called the BRI. This comes as BRI has fueled worries regarding Beijing's increasing footprint across at least 3 continents. Apart from countering BRI, the economic corridor is anticipated to spur economic growth by utilizing improved connectivity, economic integration between Asia, Gulf and Europe. In what can be called as a major development, Italy is likely to walk out of China's BRI. Remember, Italy is the only G7 nation to sign up to the Belt and Road Initiative led by the Chinese. Let's tell you more about BRI. Why is it problematic, and why is it that the world needs an alternative to BRI? Well, China was countered in many ways. Many argue that yes, there's a consensus that was reached, but there is subtle messaging that many countries want to put across to China, and that's exactly what was done. Well, Xi's absence that was underscored in China losing prominence in some way or the other. It was seen in some ways by various commentators. Many people also argue that this could be seen in some ways as China isolated on key issues such as war in Ukraine, though there was no explicit mention of Russia that was found in that common joint statement. US-India engaged with the nations and strengthened the stance despite bilateral problems between India and China. The fact that there was a consensus that could be reached is something that was congratulatory and worthy of the diplomatic efforts. Now, this is seen as a response to China's Belt and Road Initiative, the economic corridor that we are talking about. The Belt and Road Initiative has been fiercely criticized for compromising the sovereignty of nations, laying a debt trap for the poor or underdeveloped countries in the garb of developing infrastructure. Criticism by the Chinese media indicated China's discomfort. The media in China is state-sponsored and usually represents the view of the Communist Party. The dynamics of the summits, they were illustrated by China's limited role. Xi Jinping was not here, we know that, so was Vladimir Putin's absence. And despite their absence, there was a consensus that was reached. There were issues that were raised by China. It was seen as attempts to thwart the progress. The fact that there is a certain form and manner in which the Chinese media and the Chinese authorities, per se, if you can call media as authorities, have reacted, only shows that they're uncomfortable with what has happened, especially this particular initiative. Let's also listen in to what G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant had to say about the summit, its success and what it has achieved.
Amitabh Kant ji, namaste, dhanyavad and congratulations. Is it now sinking in that you've achieved what was seemingly looking like impossible even on the night before the day of the summit?
Well, it was difficult. It was very, very tricky. But I think as a team, we've managed it, and it's been largely possible because of India's great stature today, and because of the Prime Minister's own, his credibility in a democracy being very high. And I think I work as the Sherpa to the Prime Minister. So because his stature was high, I could take many risks. I could bulldoze a little bit, and I could get everybody together. The emerging markets got together, and we had good negotiators. And I think we really pushed hard because Brazil, Indonesia, South Africa and India, all of us, when we get together, we bring a lot of power. And then I realized that as we went along, Saudi, Turkey, Argentina, Mexico all joined us to say that we will not allow G20 to be wrecked. It will not be a divided house. It will be a voice of consensus. And that brought everybody together. We had many challenges while we were negotiating. And in the final stages, I think it went up about minimum 15 times, up and down, up and down, up and down. But I think we were just fortunate to have clinched it. So I think it was, to my mind, I give a lot of credit to this because of the elevated stature of India, and also because I was working as really the Sherpa of the Prime Minister. His personal credibility was very high, and I could pull it off. True. Actually, we got into the final round of negotiation at about 11:30. Next day morning was the leaders' conference, and there was just no time, but we took it to brinkmanship. But important thing is that it's not about IAS or foreign service. We are all working for the country, and we are all working essentially to ensure that India wins. And I had a team of very good officers. I had sitting right and left to me the Brazilian Sherpa, who's a renowned diplomat, and I had Zen, who's the South African Sherpa.
There seems to be significant progress compared to Bali, Amitabhji. And in one interesting part is the economic corridor. Italy now has hinted to China that they're trying to pull out of Belt and Road, and because they're part of this economic corridor. That's a big strategic win, sir.
Yeah. So, Anand, what India has done is a win for multilateralism. It's a win for developing countries. It's a win for emerging markets. It's a win for the global south. And it's a win for consensus politics. And it's a win for peace. It's a clarion call for peace in the world today. And what the document really states very clearly is that growth and development have to be paramount for emerging markets. And this is really the key to this document.
That was G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant talking about the success of the summit and the key deliverables that have been achieved. As we've been highlighting in our special coverage, the fact that there was a joint statement that could be agreed upon by all the member nations is historic in itself. The fact that the Russia-Ukraine crisis, a war that has divided the world on two sides, could not stop the member nations from agreeing on various issues is something that has been hailed in the world of democracy as something which has been a successful summit under the leadership of India. Pallavi with us on the broadcast. Pallavi, a successful summit that was hosted by India under the presidency, under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Narendra Modi as far as G20 is concerned, and now that has been handed over to Brazil.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I think the biggest achievement has been that contrary to the naysayers, there was actually a New Delhi declaration. And these were difficult times in which the G20 summit has been held. First of all, the first big summit, I would say, in the backdrop of the COVID recovery. Many advanced countries have also complained of a recession or economic downturn. In fact, just yesterday, news came in of Birmingham in UK also announcing a bankruptcy. So how is it that you ensure that your interests are protected, but at the same time the world is also one? That's why this whole slogan was of Vasudev Kutumbakam, that while India has every right like others to protect their own interests, but at the same time we also wanted to be more interactive. As we all have been reporting, this is very much a part of the New Delhi declaration as well, that, cooperation between countries, trade, economic ties, that's one big achievement which was there. The second, I would say, which is also has important strategic and diplomatic repercussions, is the inclusion of the African Union into G20. These are powerful, this is a huge continent with huge resources at their disposal, and they can also be used as a counter to China, because China has now been looking at making many investments in Africa as a part of its expansionist policy. The moment you include Africa Union, and largely because of pressure coming in from India, that why should a large part of the world be left behind? Why should we look down upon them? This was a huge coup, I would say, certainly as far as the G20 summit is concerned. Two more important developments, of course, was a biofuel global alliance as an alternative energy form, cleaner fuel in contrast to fossil fuel, and of course the IMEE corridor, which we all have been talking about. That also strategically is to build up a counter to China.